Talk about a crusher. Yes! Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And gone!
Welcome back to the Schoolyard Sports podcast. I'm this podcast Lane Frank. We're now in episode 247. So we're 247 episodes through, and I got an action-packed episode planned for you. We're going to break down the Super Bowl between the Seahawks and the Patriots. We're going to go through the trade deadline currently going on in the NBA, college basketball heating up as we enter into February. Carlos Alcaraz just won the Australian Open. We got a lot more to go through in this action-packed episode 247. Let's start off episode 247, how we always do, with our headlines in the NBA. James Harden has officially been traded straight up to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Darius Garland. Now, I love this trade for the Clippers. I think Darius Garland is a great piece. If James Harden is going to be your point guard, well, then you don't necessarily need him anymore because James Harden isn't best as a point guard. I think he's best as a shooting guard. I don't know how well this is going to work out for Cleveland. I think, I'm always a pass-first kind of point guard guy, which I can kind of see in Darius Garland. Hopefully that works out for them in LA. I love that move, getting a younger piece. Harden is obviously incredible. He's a Hall of Famer. It's the end of an era, and we're going to talk about it more later. But the Cleveland Cavaliers get Harden, and the Los Angeles Clippers get former number 5 overall pick, Darius Garland. Jaren Jackson Jr. got traded today in a huge trade over to the Utah Jazz. A few other players went with him, but really the big return is getting guys like Walter Clayton Jr. and getting 3 first-round picks in return for Memphis. It's a big deal. Jaren Jackson Jr. is obviously one of the best big men in the game right now. I wish he went to a more of an exciting team, but I think being paired up next to Lauri Markkanen will still get people amped up to see. We'll see how this looks for guys like Ace Bailey and how that works out for them because, yes, they do play similar positions, similar play styles. I'm interested to see how this affects guys like Ace Bailey, maybe even Lauri Markkanen himself down the line. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is headed over to the Utah Jazz. Jaden Ivey, former top 5 pick to the Detroit Pistons, got traded to the Chicago Bulls today. I like that trade for Chicago. I think, Jaden Ivey could be a really good guard in the NBA still after a few rough years in Detroit. But Jaden Ivey, former Purdue Boilermakers basketball star, headed over to the Chicago Bulls. Now, Nikola Vucevic got moved away from the Bulls today. He had been there for a very long time. If you can remember, he got traded about 5 years ago for Wendell Carter Jr. when he was in the Bulls. Vucevic went from the Magic to the Bulls, and now he's going from the Bulls to the Celtics in return for Anthony Simons. Anthony Simons had a very short-lived tenure out in Portland. I think he actually got traded in that Michael Brogdon deal about a few months back. Anthony Simons heading over to Chicago, and Nikola Vucevic, a nice pickup right there, kind of filling in what they've missed since losing guys like Luke Cornett, losing guys like Kristaps Porzingis. Vucevic headed over to the Celtics. Now, in the NFL, we have our Super Bowl set, everybody. That's not the only news. Clint Kubiak is becoming the Raiders head coach, and Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur's brother, is going to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. 2 things right there outside the Super Bowl. And we've got the Super Bowl Schoolyard Sports NFL Gameday coming up next. Now in the MLB, there wasn't too much news either. Brandon Donovan, star second baseman of the St. Louis Cardinals, heading over to the Seattle Mariners in the big deal. In return, I think the Cardinals get pitcher, actually a 2-way pitcher, Durangelo Citinje, played at Mississippi State for a few years. He's a switch pitcher, something you've never seen before until you've seen him. There are some rumblings that he might switch to only being a righty, but for now, that pitcher, Durangelo Citinje, headed over to the St. Louis Cardinals. That's about for the headlines this week. Stay tuned for the rest of episode 247. The Super Bowl is here, and so is Schoolyard Sports NFL Game Day, the last one of the season. What a great season we've had so far. We've been through so many things, but I get to pick this game now, the game we've all been waiting for, the Super Bowl. Now let's break down. For both these teams, with new head coaches, Mike Macdonald, his second year as a head coach in Seattle, after being a great defense coordinator in establishments like the Baltimore Ravens and the Michigan Wolverines, well, he found his spark here, brought to Seattle, and now he's in the Super Bowl. For someone like Mike Vrabel, who got done wrong by Tennessee Titans after really taking them to great heights conference championships, divisional rounds, playoff buys, gets fired by them a few years ago, and now he's back. He's back with the team he's always wanted to be with, and the guy you always thought could maybe be Bill Belichick's successor one day, Mike Vrabel, is in the Super Bowl with the New England Patriots, the franchise he played for, the franchise he became an all-time great with, Mike Vrabel. Now, these quarterbacks have taken different paths. Drake May, top 3 pick. Sam Darnold, also a top 3 pick, both actually picked at number 3. Now, Drake May obviously saw immediate success because he was surrounded by the right culture and the right pieces. Sam Darnold, not so much. Struggled in New York, went to Carolina, struggled there. Went to San Francisco, struggled there. Now he's in Seattle. After going to Minnesota last year, winning 14 games, getting done wrong by the Minnesota Vikings, and them not bringing him back. Well, he's here now, and he's in the Super Bowl, which I don't think anybody ever thought could happen. I don't think so. I don't think everybody thought Seattle could get back to this point. I don't think people thought New England could get back to this point. Because about 10 years ago, when we were in Super Bowl 49, it was both these teams. Top of the world Seahawks, top of the world Patriots. And when you think of it, 2 years ago, both these teams were close to rock bottom. Pete Carroll just left the Seahawks. Bill Belichick had just left the New England Patriots. They're back in the Super Bowl. These are two great franchises, great owners, great GMs that are ready to win a Super Bowl. But there has to be a winner. I think the winner of Super Bowl 60 is going to be the New England Patriots, everybody. And here's why. They're so great all around. We think of it, the offensive line play is great. The defensive line can step up when needed. Guys like Christian Barmore. In that secondary, guys like Christian Gonzalez, just a second-year player, is potentially the best defensive back in the NFL. That special teams unit is special. This offense coordinator, Josh McDaniels, who has gone through stints as not just their offense coordinator, but also as the head coaches of teams like the Raiders, teams like the Indianapolis Colts for about a day, teams like the Denver Broncos, found his way back here to coach with Mike Vrabel. The defense has stepped up in ways you couldn't think of, and Drake May has pieced it all together. This running game with Ramondre Stevenson is solid, and I think the Patriot way will get the job done for them. You want to talk about how bad the offense has been recently for the Patriots? I can talk to you about how this Seattle Seahawks defense is good, but it isn't filled all around with stars. Now they have solid players. They have Reek Wallen, they have Devon Witherspoon, they have Leonard Williams. But outside of those top 3 guys, the list really ends on superstars, and it's really carried by the rest of the coaching of that great Seattle Seahawks coaching staff. I'm looking forward to a great game. I am. I'm looking forward to a 31-27 Super Bowl victory by the New England Patriots, where Drake May is down 27-24 and has a great drive on that last drive and wins the Super Bowl for New England. That's my Super Bowl prediction. The Patriots pick up yet another Super Bowl ring, the first of the 2020s. Now, top 5. This week's top 5 is the top 5 sports conspiracies that I believe in. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not in any way, shape, or form. But these things are conspiracies. I think they are facts that we just don't know about. Here are the top 5 sports conspiracies I believe in. Starting out with number 5. The only reason Miami jumped Notre Dame on Selection Sunday in college football this year was because Virginia lost, and it's bad business for the ACC in a 12-team playoff to be left out. I think that's the reason why it happened. I think if Virginia ends up winning that ACC championship game against Duke, Notre Dame stays in at that 8 seed, 7 seed, whatever it was, and Miami gets left out of the college football playoff. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think the committee wasn't going to put a 7-5 Duke team in there that won the ACC, but they were going to put a 10-2 Miami team that had a head-to-head win over Notre Dame in there. But the reason they switched it after having no changes and no game being played by either team was because Virginia lost, and it's bad business for the ACC to be left out of a 12-team playoff. Number 4, MLB changes the actual baseballs almost every month, almost every year, to change between offense and between defense. We have the juice ball era, we have the dead ball era. If you can remember, from about 2018 to 2020, well, everybody could hit home runs. And then the 2021 season, we had about 5 no-hitters before May. Now here we are, new baseball era. I'd say it's a little bit more balanced. Some months it's juice, some months it's dead, but I think the MLB switches with the balls all the time to see if they want to make it juice that month or if they want to make it dead. We've seen it for certain games. You can think of it for the Field of Dreams game where there's a ton of home runs. Well, I think they send juice balls to those games. There's been a lot of events over the years that I think the MLB will send juice balls to. You can think of a Yankees versus Red Sox game in London where the score was like 17-11 If you're trying to tell me the MLB isn't juicing the balls for those games, you are completely wrong. And that's my fourth conspiracy on this list. Number 3, the Super Bowl power outage was intentional. It was. The Ravens were on a huge run that game, and they wanted to keep people tuned in. They wanted that story to be that could connect with the viewers at home that didn't even like sports, that it was two coaches coaching against each other in this tight game that was going on. That it was the underdog quarterback Colin Kaepernick versus the guy Joe Flacco, who went to Delaware and is now in the Super Bowl. The power outage effectively didn't work, in my opinion, because the first play back from it, the Ravens kept that momentum, and they ran back a Super Bowl kickoff after halftime. Now, the game ended up being close. It ended up being a great game. Ravens won that Super Bowl, of course, but I do believe the Super Bowl power outage was planned by the NFL. Number 2, Argentina's loss in the 2022 World Cup to Saudi Arabia was rigged. I really think so. You're telling me Argentina, who was on a 36-match winning streak, was going to lose to Saudi Arabia, who I don't think had ever even qualified, let alone won a World Cup game before that match, was just going to lose? And that was the only game Argentina lost in that World Cup, and they won the World Cup. Maybe they took a deal. Maybe they said, we're just so good. It's just a group game. We'll lose this game, and we'll still win the World Cup. And they did. That's number 2 on my list. Argentina's loss in the 2022 World Cup to Saudi Arabia was rigged. Number 1, and this is a one a lot of people believe in, and especially me. The NBA rigs the draft lottery, but not just rigs it in general, but they rig it to be when you lose a superstar player, you get the number 1 overall pick. It's very simple. Anthony Davis leaves the New Orleans Pelicans in 2019. Well, who do they get? They get Zion Williamson. They jump up a ton of picks. What about last year? Luka Doncic leaves the Dallas Mavericks. What happens? They jump up a ton of picks, and they get the number 1 overall pick, Cooper Flagg. Nobody wants to see Anthony Davis slum away his days in New Orleans. He wanted out, and the Pelicans were being frisky about it. They were being annoying about it. Maybe the NBA told them, trade him to LA, and a month earlier, we'll give you that number 1 overall pick. And they did. And they got Zion Williamson. A month later, they traded AD. What about for Dallas Mavericks? They wanted a new direction. NBA wanted Cooper Flagg in a city like Dallas, maybe, and they wanted Luka in a city like LA to take over from when LeBron left. I believe in the NBA draft lottery being rigged. I'm not necessarily the biggest conspiracy theorist in the world, but these are 5 sports conspiracies that I believe in. Now, did you know, this week's Did You Know is, did you know the Super Bowl wasn't officially called the Super Bowl until Super Bowl III? Before that, it was called the AFL-NFL Championship. So if anybody tries to tell you the Packers won the first ever Super Bowl, you tell them no, and you tell them that Joe Namath and the Jets won the first ever Super Bowl in Super Bowl III. Did you know that? Leave that in the comments. That's about for Did You Know this week. Now, let's talk about the end of an era, James Harden and the Los Angeles Clippers. If you can remember about 3 years ago before the season started, James Harden was in China and said Daryl Morey is a liar, he's a traitor, and I will never play for an organization he's a part of again. Now, the theories behind that are that James Harden was promised the contract extension by Daryl Morey if he took a pay cut, and they would take care of him the next offseason. That never happened, and James Harden ended up a Los Angeles Clipper where things really didn't work out. Now, he's averaging 25 points per game right now, and he's playing point guard for them, which he mostly has done under Ty Lue in this Los Angeles Clippers staff, but they never made it out of the first round, and they never really saw any real success. Yes, he was an all-star, but at the end of the day, they didn't see real success. And I'm starting to think it's more of a James Harden problem. We can all agree he was great in Houston, and he played in Houston for a very long time, from 2012 all the way up until 2020. Before that, he was only in Oklahoma City for 3 years. After Houston, he was only in Brooklyn for 1 year. After that, he was only in Philly for 2 seasons. And then this time, he was only in LA for 3 seasons. So what's the story? James Harden was a hometown hero in Houston, but what is he now? Is he a team hopper? Is he a guy who can only play for 1 or 2 years in one city? That's what I think of James Harden. That's what my generation will always think of James Harden. Now, I love what James Harden did in Houston. I can remember the nights where he's dropping 40s, averaging 40, where he would have those great nights. But the new James Harden is a team hopper, and that's really the whole thing about it. James Harden is a Hall of Famer. He's a top 75 player of all time. He's a great player in NBA history. But team-wise, he really isn't. He made the finals once, never did much in the conference finals, blew a 3-2 lead in 2017. James Harden is not a team player. I think everybody knows that. And James Harden won't be in legend of the NBA in my eyes. He might be a Hall of Famer, but he'll never be a legend. James Harden on a new team once again, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Will this one last 7 years like Houston? Will this one last 1 year like Brooklyn? Or will it even last one day in Cleveland? All I know is it's the end of an era for James Harden and the Los Angeles Clippers. Now for all the NBA fans right here, I'm going to throw a great bone at you. The Hornets Spotlight of the week. The Charlotte Hornets, they're on a 7-game winning streak. That might be the longest win streak of their entire franchise's history. But I think right now, they're sitting at 23-28. Right now is the best point in their franchise's history. Not when they were in the second round against the Miami Heat. Not when Kemba Walker was dropping 60. Not when Jeremy Lamb would hit crazy shots against Toronto. Buzzer beaters. Right now is the best time in Charlotte. The reason for that is the way this starting five is, the way his coaching staff is, the way their trajectory is on this 7-game winning streak. Because there really is a sense of maturity and a sense of professionalism that goes with this squad now. We grew up with LaMelo Ball, at least I did, and we know LaMelo Ball wasn't always the most mature person out there, and he struggled for a little bit with that, with injuries and a few other things early on in his NBA career. I think right now LaMelo Ball doesn't have to be the sole reason that Charlotte wins games. There's other guys in his team now, but LaMelo Ball can do great in his role as the point guard and still the face of this franchise, which is why he's still here, which is why he hasn't been traded. And God forbid he does. We have 2 days until the trade deadline time is recording, but this team is rolling, and LaMelo Ball is a big reason, part of that, as their point guard. Like Concanupple, when I see Concanupple, I think of Klay Thompson, because nobody really knew Concanupple was until about the summer heading into his freshman year at Duke, when people were saying, well, this guy's going to be the next Reed Sheppard. Where Reed Sheppard was Kentucky the year before, Concanupple's going to do that at Charlotte. Now, Concanupple was a top 3 pick. Reed Sheppard was a top 3 pick to the Houston Rockets, and Concanupple has done incredible things in his rookie season as, a great player. When we watched that game, Cooper Flagg and the Mavericks versus Concanupple and the Hornets, it was just a great battle to see go out there, and Concanupple and his team won it because the other guys around him. Brandon Miller, small forward. Brandon Miller is a guy I've always waited to take off in the NBA, because when people say, oh, this guy plays like LeBron, this guy plays like Kevin Durant, this guy plays like Stephen Curry, they don't always mean it. But when I watched Brandon Miller at Alabama in college basketball and whatever his controversies were before and after that, he played like Kevin Durant. Put on the tape, Brandon Miller played like Kevin Durant in college. And I'm not saying he's playing like Kevin Durant in the NBA, but he's starting to become a lot better of a player in the NBA, and he's starting to get healthier, starting to get more mature, getting over some of his past struggles, and Brandon Miller is going to be one of the best players in the league very soon, in my opinion. I think Brandon Miller will be an all-star next season, no doubt about it, because he's that good. When you look at the power forward, Miles Bridges has survived a long time in Charlotte. Whatever he's gone through, off the court, on the court, he's still here after being drafted in the same draft class as guys like Michael Porter Jr., Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Both those guys aren't on the team they drafted them anymore. Clippers for Shai, Nuggets for Michael Porter Jr., but Miles Bridges is still here in Charlotte. And then for center, a guy who played for my Michigan Wolverines, a guy who I thought could have done better there, but is doing great in the NBA, Moussa Diabate, a 7'2" wingspan and a great 6'10" center for them right now. And they've got depth behind all these guys. They've got Grant Williams, the always vet that everybody likes to be around. They've got guys like Ryan Kalkbrenner, a rookie off the bench who's 7'3". They've got guys all around the court, Colin Sexton to back up LaMelo Ball, and this team is just having fun with it. They're not even in the play-in picture right now, but soon they will be, and the next season they'll be in the playoff picture, and things will take off from there in Charlotte. Because LaMelo's young, LaMelo's entering his prime, Concanuple's only going to get better. I just said Brandon Miller is going to get better. We'll see what happens to Miles Bridges, and Moussa Diabate is starting to take off after being in the G League for the early part of his career. That's my spotlight for the week on the Charlotte Hornets. Now, college hoops madness. Now, if you follow Schoolyard Sports on Instagram, you saw the hot takes, but now I'm going to give them to you with some deep analysis on it. My mid-season college basketball hot takes. You could say mid-season. You get November, you get December, you get January, now you get February, you get March, and you get those 2 weeks in April to crown champion. Let's hop into the hot takes, everybody. First one I've got for you. If Darren Peterson can stay healthy for Kansas, they will make the Final Four. When I watch a Darren Peterson Kansas squad, I see them as one of the best teams, if not the best team in college basketball, and I don't joke about that. their game against Texas Tech the other night, whether it was for Texas Tech with or without their point guard, I think Kansas wins that game. It's a road game. Darren Peterson has them down 61-58, and he hits 2 threes to win that game, 64-61. Guys like Flory Badinga are flying across the court. Guys like Melvin Council playing great. And Bill Self rallying this team together as the best coach right now, college basketball, if you want to say. Bill Self getting these guys together. And Darren Peterson, if he stays healthy, will bring this Jayhawks squad to the Final Four. Next one, Arizona, the number 1 undefeated team in the nation, will lose at least 3 times from now until the end of the regular season. Here's why. You're going to have to play Texas Tech. You're going to have to go to Allen Fieldhouse. And you're going to have to play Houston. You have to play Iowa State, top 10 team. The Big 12 is stacked. Arizona hasn't had to go through that stacked squad yet. They will very soon. And I think Arizona picks up a few losses before the end of that regular season. Next one, the Florida Gators, the reigning national champions, will go undefeated the rest of the regular season. Now, they struggled a lot. They had a great out-of-conference schedule, and they didn't win anything. They lost to Arizona. They lost to TCU. They lost to Duke. They didn't win any of those games. But now they're here. Now they're playing good basketball in the SEC, and they've got an easy schedule coming up. They only play one ranked opponent from now to the end of the regular season. That's Arkansas. That's a home game. I think you got that one. Florida goes undefeated the rest of the regular season, and they win the SEC. Next one, St. John's wins the Big East. Kind of similar going for St. John's. You know, they played in Players Era. They didn't do such a great job out there. They lost to Auburn. They lost to Alabama a few weeks before that. And the squad that was supposed to be, one of the best in college basketball fell off a little bit cliff, and they fell out of the polls. Now they're on a 7-game winning streak in a weak Big East. Big East nonetheless, though, and I think they will win this Big East over UConn. I expect them to go undefeated the rest of the way in the Big East, take down UConn, and win the Big East. St. John's wins the Big East over number 3 in the country, UConn Huskies. Next one, Penny Hardaway is out at Memphis at the end of the season. Memphis has all new players this year. Penny Hardaway has lost his edge in the NIL era because he can't just hand these guys money under the table anymore. They had a great squad a few years ago, 2019. I mean, it's crazy saying that, but they did. They've had so many NBA players. They had Jaden McDaniels on that squad. They had James Wiseman on that squad. They had Precious Achiuwa on that squad. A lot of good players played for that team. Boogie Ellis played for that squad. A few years later, they got guys like Jalen Duren, who's great. Amoni Bates, who was great at a time in college basketball. Last year, you had PJ Haggerty, who was the leading scorer in college basketball, and you couldn't win an NCAA tournament game. But now you hear Penny Hardaway, and you still can't win big-time games in a weak conference, a conference that you should go undefeated in, or at least win a plethora of games in. And they're just not doing that. Memphis and Penny Hardaway part ways at the end of the season. Next one, we've got a great college basketball game at a conference coming up February 21st. Duke versus Michigan. I think that's going to be a 1 versus 2 matchup after Arizona and UConn lose a couple games. That's going to be the best regular season game we've seen in years, because it's not in November. We're talking about in February, a Big Ten versus ACC matchup. 2 storied programs, Michigan, the Fab Five, Duke, and all their riches, taking on each other in D.C. We'll get some good Schoolyard Sports content out for you there in a few weeks in Washington, D.C. in the district. Duel in the district, Duke versus Michigan. Next one, a guy I love to watch in college basketball right now, and a team I love to watch, are Keaton Wagler and Illinois Fighting Illini. Brad Underwood, Illinois head coach, has his best team he's ever had in Champaign this season. You could say, Layton, they've had a lot of great teams. Yes, they've had. They've been a 1 seed. They've won the Big Ten with Ayo Dosunmu, Kofi Cockburn, and a lot of great college basketball players. But that team wasn't as good as this team. This team has 2 losses on the year, 1 to UConn, where Keaton Wagler was just a young true freshman who only played 13 minutes in that game, and went to Nebraska at home, and they just beat Nebraska on the road to avenge that loss. Illinois, not saying they're better than Michigan, but they're definitely a close second in the Big Ten. Keaton Wagler and Illinois are going to make noise come March. This true freshman, this 3-star true freshman out of Kansas, can't believe Bill Self slipped from his backyard, is playing for Illinois, and he's the best freshman right now in the Big Ten that I like to watch. You see him drop 45 points against Purdue, drop a ton of points against Nebraska. He's that kind of guy. And the Europeans on this squad, when you look at Peja Stojakovic, David Mirkovic, the Ivisic brothers, Tomislav and Zvomir Ivisic, make this Illinois squad great. Just wait till Kylan Boswell, former Arizona point guards, gets healthy. In Illinois, sky's the limit, and Brad Underwood's best team ever in Champaign. Got 2 more for you. Miami and St. Louis are proving that in an NIL era, you can win with a low NIL budget. Miami is undefeated. St. Louis has one loss in the year, and they're both going to make the NCAA tournament. And the last one I've got for you, preseason number 1 Purdue doesn't make it to the second weekend. Matt Painter's had struggled with this in the past. Made the NCAA championship 2 years ago, but last year lost in the Sweet 16. The year before their championship run, well, they ended up losing in the first round. I think this preseason number 1 team is not built for a deep March run, and they do get upset before the Sweet 16. That's about it for my hot takes this week in college basketball. Now, question of the day. This week's question of the day is, what network gives you the best NFL Super Bowl broadcast? Now, for a lot of people, they're just going to pick whatever's new, whatever's best and recent at the time. I can remember about 7 years ago when Tony Romo predicted a ton of plays in the AFC Championship game between Patrick Mahomes and the New England Patriots. Then he called Super Bowl 2 weeks later, and it was such a boring Super Bowl, but, they said Tony Romo and Jim Nantz did their best to electrify everybody. Now everybody hates that broadcasting crew, at least Tony Romo, it seems like. Then the next best thing is now Tom Brady. Great job he's done at Fox so far, how he presents the game, and how he is the best NFL broadcaster, and that is the best broadcasting crew, which it is great. But I'm going to go with the classic. I'm a Mike Tirico guy, I was an Al Michaels guy, and I'm a Chris Collinsworth guy. I think that NBC is the best way to watch the Super Bowl, best broadcast when they do it. Every few years, NBC is the best Super Bowl broadcast. And don't get me wrong, I think they're doing it this Sunday, Super Bowl on NBC. That's about our question of the day this week. Leave your thoughts in the comments. That's about for Schoolyard Sports and Lane Frank, episode 247. Thank you for tuning in. Follow Schoolyard Sports on Instagram at Schoolyard Sports. Follow Schoolyard Sports on X at Schoolyard Sport. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review for the best sports content in the world. Back here next week, episode 248. Stay tuned.